Hello and welcome to Think and Thrive. Today we have a very special guest, Ms. Nida Raza, who is the Senior Director and Head of Global Capital Markets for the MENA region for Jones Lang LaSalle. To give you an idea of what her responsibilities are, think $10 billion in real estate transactions in the region. That is what she is responsible for. In addition, Ms. Raza is an expert in Islamic finance, and we are really looking forward to her giving us some great insight into the real estate market, into Islamic finance here in the region. I would also like to take a moment to thank both Hannah, one of our IB film students who has helped to set this up, and of course, Anya, who is today our moderator. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Ms. Anya and Ms. Nida to the stage. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Ms. Nida. Pleasure to have you here at Sunmarke.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Shall we get started?
Sure.
So, you hold a degree in physics from the UCL. How did you end up in finance?
Great question. Ever since I was a kid, probably 5 years old, I wanted to go to space. So that's what I've always wanted to do, and that's what I always dreamed of. I was very, very good in math in general, and probably sciences as well. So that was really my path. I think it was cemented when I was 5 that this is what I wanted to do, and I needed to get there. So as you're growing up, you watch space movies. I did maths and further maths and physics as A-levels, and then I wanted to do physics with space science at a London university. So that's what I applied for. I got an amazing scholarship, and that's how I started at university. As I was graduating, manned missions were no longer happening as fast and furiously as whilst I was growing up. So I was kind of lost. So I went to my careers advisor, and I said, look, this is all I know. I'm not really sure what to do now. What do you think? And she said to me, how about investment banking? And I was like, yes, that would be great, only I know nothing about finance, and I definitely haven't done anything remotely related to economics or finance as I grew up. So she said to me that, look, banks now are walking away from taking just finance and economics students or business management students. They're looking for other disciplines because they feel you need to have that rounded edge and ability to work under pressure and mathematical in order to work for clients and think outside the box. So I said, okay, great. I'm gonna try and do an internship. So that's what I did. I applied to maybe 50 different financial institutions and insurance companies, and I interned at NatWest Markets, which on their trading floor. So you're it was a fast-paced learning environment. You're talking about many millions of dollars in currency trades in different currencies. And we used a lot of what I learned at university. The Black-Scholes model in physics, for example, was used in currency trading, and I didn't know that. So that for me is my first foray into finance. And past that, I decided that I needed to learn a little bit more before deciding where in finance I wanted to be. So I did a master's in international securities investment and banking at what was then known as the ISMA Center, now the Henley Business School in Reading. And from there, I applied to 5 places and got 4 offers and joined JP Morgan. And
wow,
the rest is history.
That's great. How would you describe what you do to someone who knows very little about capital markets?
Okay, so capital markets in general, the kind of giveaway is the capital part. So what you're doing is you are helping somebody that needs money to do something, and you're bringing the two together. Somebody that needs money to do something, and those that have money that want to put that money to work and earn something out of it. So right now I'm in a real estate advisory firm. So I do everything real estate related. So what I do is I find investors that have a piece of land or a building that they have leased out, and now they want to monetize it. So I will go and find an investor that comes in and says, okay, I like this building and I like what the money that it's generating. I'm willing to buy it. So it's bringing together a buyer and a seller where capital moves from one party to another party.
All right. So You are now the Senior Director Head Capital Markets for Jonas Lang LaSalle in the region. So, which personal characteristics of yours set you apart from your peers and allowed you to be successful?
Great, and a very loaded question. But from my perspective, I think what sets me apart is the nature of the background that I've had. So I come from a non-financial background from an education perspective. I then went into banking, and so I know how banks work. When I say how banks work, what that means is that when you go and borrow money from a bank as a real estate developer or anybody that wants to do real estate, there are certain things that you have to provide them such that they are comfortable lending money to you, because in the end, the bank wants the money back. I've been in a bank. I know exactly how they think. I know all the different areas and what things we see as people apply for bank loans for real estate that are not successful and those that are successful. So I've seen it from one side. The fact that I've worked globally, so I started working in the UK, then I went to the United States. After that, I came here in the region. I worked in Dubai, I worked in Kuwait, I worked in Bahrain, I worked in Saudi Arabia. So I have that exposure and that network. So that's another characteristic that's very important, that sets me apart. And I think the third characteristic is my ability to lead. So I'm a leader in general. So in any situation, I tend to become a leader in the group. So that sets me apart, I feel.
Oh, that's great. So you have a lot of experience in structuring Sharia compliant deals. How do you structure your commercial real estate deals to be Sharia compliant? This question was asked by Muhammad in Y10.
Okay, great question. Look, the one thing that's very important in any Sharia compliant or anything that's Islamic finance related is that the underlying business needs to be Sharia compliant, okay? So I can't do a Sharia compliant financing for a conventional bank because the conventional bank business is non-compliant. So it doesn't matter if the loan that I give is Islamic, the fact is that the use of the building is being used for non-compliant activities, okay? So what I can do, however, is I can fund the developer who is building the building. What I can't do then is provide funding to somebody who wants to lease that building to a bank. So there's a difference. So the construction part I can be part of. The ongoing leasing I cannot be part of. So how to make it Sharia compliant? First of all, the underlying business needs to be Sharia compliant. And then from there, it's a lot about legal documentation. So everything in terms of, most of the time, everything in terms of risks, returns, requirements are all the same. It's a lot of heavy documentation that gets involved in converting a conventional commercial structure to a Islamic commercial structure.
Oh, okay, I get it. So in Sunmarke, business is a very popular subject, and there are many sixth form students who are looking to go into a finance-related career. What are the three top skills potential financial professionals should possess in order to be successful?
Good question, and I don't think it should just be financial professionals. I think it could be across any discipline that they're in. But I think three things that are, in my view, top three things that are very important is interpersonal skills. Because in finance, you are meeting people, you need to have the great bedside manner. So interpersonal skills, very, very important. Equally, I think leadership skills are also important. But when you're a leader, you have to remember when you need to lead and when you need to be a team player. So that, I think, differentiates a regular leader to a successful leader, I'll call it. And third is the ability to think outside the box. So not follow necessarily convention, but look at what else I can do that's different. So bringing a different perspective, or the ability to bring something else to the table.
Okay, that's interesting. So in business, what was your biggest obstacle that you faced and how did you overcome it?
Okay, I've been very lucky to not have faced too many obstacles at the beginning of my career. The fact that I was one of 98 students in my undergrad degree that was female didn't make any difference per se, but there were no barriers to entry in any job or application that I applied to. I think it was very clear by the time I went into the careers industry or professional industry that you were hired on the basis of merit rather than the color of your skin, say, or your gender. Having said that, so for me, the biggest struggle was getting used to working 14, 16-hour days. So that, as a personal struggle, was something that I wasn't ready for, I suppose. But as my career progressed and I moved to this region, there was still some misconception or preconception around the ability for a female to deliver or the female to be a lead in anything. So I mentioned to you I was in Islamic finance. So I did come across a struggle which I think is pertinent and may help answer that question, which is there were very conservative male sharia scholars that were discussing a transaction. They were based in Saudi Arabia and they belonged to a government entity or a semi-government entity. I was representing a bank and I was the head of capital markets there. So naturally I was leading the transaction. So when it came to talking to the Sharia scholars, I had to go and visit them in Saudi Arabia, but I had to get approval and a letter to travel. And they were not comfortable with a woman in a room full of just men and scholars. So I was not given permission to travel. So what I did is I sent 2 of my team members who were male, who went there. And then I was video conferenced in from Dubai.
Wow.
And that's how I participated. But put a challenge in front of me and we'll always find a solution. That's what my motto is.
Yeah. So what do you look for when you're hiring young staff? What skills do you seek?
Okay, it depends on the role, but generally what I'm looking for is those 3 things that I mentioned to you before. So bedside manner. And the ability for them to tell me, if I ask them a difficult question and they don't know the answer, I really rate youngsters highly if they think about it, turn around and say, ma'am, I don't know, or, madam, I don't know the answer to this. Very few do that. They'll try and waffle, they'll try and come up with some solution. And I appreciate that also. But it takes a very strong person to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. Because what you're doing in essence is respecting the other person. The other person knows the answer, and I'm telling you that I don't know the answer. So for me, that's big. But I look for obviously interpersonal skills, leadership skills, and I think ability to work under pressure for me is paramount in youngsters.
Yeah. Do you believe that there's a balance between social life and corporate life? I mean, you're so busy, so how do you manage it?
Well, COVID helped. Okay, so generally it is very, very difficult. In investment banking, while I was in investment banking, I was working, like I said, 14, 16-hour days. But on the flip side of it, the weekend was mine. So I did all my social activities in the weekends. Weekdays was harder, especially because I was covering regions, which meant I was traveling a lot. So I was traveling 3 to 4 days a week in the weekdays. So managing, work-life balance was very difficult. I won't lie. But when I came to this region, it was slightly easier. Thursdays and Fridays or Fridays and Saturdays are the weekend. And so you have the family life is easier when you're not in a Western country like New York, say, or London, central London. You're close to pretty much everything, so you're able to manage work-life balance. You can step out for 2 hours, attend a social event or a school event or whatever you need to, and then go back to work. Whereas if you're in New York or in the UK, you have to travel back by train if you need to attend, like, for example, your kid's school play or parent-teachers meeting, etc. But you also end up becoming very good friends with your companions or your colleagues because you spend so much time with them. You almost spend more time with them than you do with your own family.
Yeah.
So they become like family. So social circles meld into work circles.
Oh, that's
very
sweet.
much so. Yeah.
So how would you advise students that are unsure about what they want to study at university?
Look, my advice would be the advice my mom gave me, which is do what you enjoy. Study what you enjoy. You will only excel at that you enjoy, because what you need to do is not important necessarily, except if you're doing things like medicine. where you're required to do certain subjects and undergrad degrees. Study what you enjoy because you don't know where you'll end up. So for example, in my training group at JP Morgan, when I was hired as a undergrad or a graduate student, there were 168 of us. There were people from all walks of life, people who studied music at university, other people that did a full medical degree, that were tired after doing 9 years of medical studies and came historians, English literature majors, mathematicians, physicists. So we came from all walks of life. And I think that's also true across most disciplines. So I'd say do whatever you enjoy the most.
Yeah. So what is your distinctive leadership impact?
My distinctive leadership impact, I would say, I learned this from my boss. So 2 things I do. One is I will not take credit for something that my team does. I will make sure that I point out the person that did it to my upper management. So I feel like it's my job to have smarter people than me working in my team, because if they do a good job, they make me look good, we all look good.
Yeah.
So that is one of my major leadership kind of goals and aims, is to have very smart people working for me. And if they do good work, I single them out within the team, but also to upper management. That's one. And the second is, I feel as a leader, my simple role is to provide an environment for my team to thrive. Whatever it is that they're good at, I want to provide the environment that allows for that to excel.
Yes, of course.
So those are the 2 things.
And you meet a lot of different people. So how would you motivate the different types of people and hold them accountable for results?
Similar to my ability to be able to provide as best I can an environment for them to thrive, I always ask them where they want to be. Where do you want to go? In the next 12 months, what do you want to have achieved? And how do you want to get there? So once I know what they want to achieve, then it's my job to provide the environment for them to get there, one, but also provide the pathway for them, the route for them to get there. And if that means they need extra courses, so it's my job to try and get that approved from upper management, or give them exposure to whatever it is they need exposure to in order to achieve their goals. So I will hold on to their ambitions for the next 12 months at the beginning of the year. We will touch base again every quarter or middle of the year to see how's it going. At the end of the year, I hold them accountable for, did they get what they wanted? And whilst they got what they wanted, did they also get, for me, what the team's motive was or the team's aim was? If not, why not? And then we go on from there.
So your current knowledge, do you think that it was related to your schooling experience or your work experience?
I think 90% was my school experience, but I would never have been able to get that 90% had I not had a very good pedigree school teaching me and giving me the skill set to be able to gain that knowledge. I would not have had the platform.
So when you began your career, what was your biggest struggle?
I think my biggest struggle was the fact that I didn't know a lot of the terminology in finance, because I really was not in it at all. I didn't know, for example, in economics, when people talked about, supply chain or demand supply curve, I think that's what it's called. I didn't know what that meant because I just didn't know what they were talking about. And I didn't have exposure. I hadn't done any internships in finance before I did my first internship. So that's probably what I struggled with the most, the terminology and getting used to it. And the second was getting used to the long hours and the weekdays.
And you also mentioned that COVID impacted your business better. How did it affect your deal flow?
So COVID put a break to normal transactions because in this region, there's just no reason and hurry to execute on transactions, because people just wait to see where's the bottom. If I'm going to buy, am I buying at the bottom or am I buying at the top? What if I buy today and the prices go down? So last 12 months, we've not seen any transactions of significant size. Having said that, what we have seen is people realizing that they need to think a long-term strategy for another shock like that to happen. So we find a lot of businesses that own real estate, that real estate is not core to their business. So let me give you an example. There are school systems that own buildings or all the schools that they operate in, but That's just incidental to their business. Their core business is operating schools. So if you look at, from a financial term, if you look at the margins that they earn from operating a school, it's much higher than the returns that they get in earning real estate. So what should they do? They should try and monetize or try and sell the school building, lease it back. Yes, it has a cost, but take that money and invest it into better operations, and then they can enjoy the higher margin. So if I put in numbers, on average, we see mid to high teens in margins. So that's revenue to bottom line for schools, whereas real estate gives you returns in 9s and 10%. So you can double your return if you just monetize an asset that you have that's sitting on your balance sheet, that it's not your job to own real estate or to manage it.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so this kind of advice I love giving. And it's, for me, thinking outside the box. So then you meet not just developers of buildings and owners of buildings, but rather business people that own buildings that happen to be part of their business as they were growing their business. And now it's time to give them that kind of advice and see where it takes them.
And post-COVID, what do you see as upcoming trends in the region?
Flexi working is a big one. My own company leads by example on that. We have flexi working hours. We have the ability to work from home or work from anywhere, and they will provide a facility for us where we need it. So flexi working is a big one. And I think there's been an acceleration in technology to be able to do more virtual meetings anywhere you are and wherever you are. So it's provided the ability to have some work-life balance. Because I can tell you I save a good 2 hours a day not having to commute to back and from work. Because, the travel time, for example, is saved. So for me, that adds up by the end of the week.
So what advice would you give your 15-year-old self about university or about first jobs?
What would I give my 15-year-old? My 15-year-old self, I would probably say, carry on doing what you're doing and do it to the best of your ability. And I think it always rings in my ear because my mom always used to tell me that whatever you do, just do it really well. And in terms of first job, don't worry about it. It will come.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.